Welcome, students, parents, faculty, community members, and especially their veterans and their family members to our Veterans Day Assembly. I'm honored to be speaking with you on such an important occasion. We are here on this special day to honor the men and women who wear the uniform of the United States of America. These are the people who defend our liberty and our way of life. We want to remember the sacrifices they made, the courage it took to defend our country. We can never fully repay our debt of gratitude to more than 650,000 American service members who died in battle, or the 1.4 million who were wounded. We can, however, recognize that 25 million veterans still living. So we thank you, and today we show our appreciation. Please rise as a Brashear band plays the national anthem.
The United States military is made up of 6 branches: the Army, the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, and the Space Force. The Army includes the cavalry, which is the mounted force on the ground and in the air; the infantry, which is the combat force and the backbone of the Army; the airborne artillery, which include the paratroopers and heavy weapons; the engineers, whom the nation relies on for the construction of both civil and military nature; and the reserves, the servicemen and women who are always on call, ready for service at home or away. Often the first on the scene, the Marines are the world's most elite fighting force. They act on behalf of our nation in land combat, naval and amphibious operations, and in the air. There are currently over 180,000 Marines stationed around the world, ready to answer the call. As the saying goes, there are no ex-Marines or former Marines. There are Marines in different uniforms and in different phases of life. The U.S. Navy mirrors the strength from the mighty force of the sea. The Navy serves on, beneath, and above the water in battle and rescue and on guard. The U.S. Navy is now the most technologically advanced ocean-going armed force in the world. While other branches serve our country on the land and sea, the Air Force is not held by other limitations. The Air Force defends our country in the air. They are those service members who pursue diverse interests, find their strengths, and elevate technological, mechanical, aeration, and nuclear protection skills while serving the country in the U.S. Air Force. The Coast Guard is both a federal law enforcement agency and a military force. Therefore, it is a faithful protector in times of peace and a valiant defender in times of war. On an average day, the Coast Guard conducts 45 search and rescue cases, saves 10 lives, gets over 1,000 pounds of illegal drugs, screens 360 vessels for potential security threats prior to arrival in U.S. ports, completes hundreds of safety examinations, new inspections, and pollution investigations. Space Force is the newest branch in the military, established in 2019. The mission of the Space Force is to provide freedom of operation for the United States in, from, and through space, and provide prompt and sustained space operations. Space power is vital to the U.S. prosperity. Space Force's 5 competencies are space security, combat power projection, space mobility and logistics, information mobility, and space domain awareness. We honor those who have served in all branches of the military.
Next, the Sheriff Band will be the Armed Forces Medal, which is made up of the anthems of the Armed Forces. We recognize that the Space Force anthem is not included in this medley, but the Space Force does have an anthem. Some of the words of the Space Force anthem are, to the moon, to Mars, and to space far beyond. The future of our country lies in the stars. We march onwards, even to the darkest night we shall bear a torch of light. We defy the abyss with all of our might we fight, we are the United States Space Force. The first anthem in the medley is the Coast Guard anthem, Semper Paratus, which is what before I was ready. The anthem of the Army is titled The Army Goes Roaming Along. The third song in the medley is the anthem of the Navy, Anchor's Way. Marines have the Marines hymn pulled from the halls of Montezuma. Last, the anthem of the Air Force is titled the U.S. Air Force Song, where the Tulsa Nuns softly welcome through all the under. Before the band plays each anthem, we will announce the branch where we would like for the veterans present to stand and represent the branch in which they served. Coast Guard.
because they signed a treaty to end the war. There were 35 countries fighting in both sides. Then Armistice Day was turned into Veterans Day. They signed the treaty that there should be no more wars and there were a lot of wars. There was an unarmed soldier and his grave was big and he's guarded by soldiers day to night and in bad weather. We celebrate it because it's important to us for our freedom. I like Veterans Day because
the United States flies as a symbol of all that we are. The open flag is a symbol of liberty. The flag has carried the message of freedom and inspired Americans, both at home and abroad. When it is not flying, it is carefully folded into a triangle. By displaying the flag and giving it a distinctive fold, we show respect to the flag and express our gratitude to those individuals who fought and continue to fight for our freedoms. There is no official flag folding script, but various sources have applied meaning to each of the steps in folding a flag. The Gold Star Mothers of America, the Boy Scouts, and the Air Force have created a script. We have created our own version. The first fold represents the birth of the flag. On June 14, 1777, the Second Continental Congress determined that the flag of the United States be 13 stripes, alternating between 7 red and 6 white, and that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field representing a new constellation. The second fold gives meaning to the stars and stripes. The 13 horizontal stripes represent the original 13 colonies, while the stars represent the states of the Union. The colors of the flag are symbolic as well. Red symbolizes hardiness and valor. White signifies purity and innocence, and blue represents vigilance, perseverance, and justice. The next fold signifies how the flag has progressed. The arrangement of the stars evolved between 1777 and 1960 into the design presented before you today. The fourth fold remembers our nation's Independence Day. Our founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776, and each year Americans celebrate our liberty by lighting up the night sky with fireworks. The fifth fold reminds us of another lit-up sky in 1814, when the rocket's red glare and the bombs bursting in air inspired Francis Scott Key. While he was on a ship in the harbor at Baltimore's Fort McHenry, he was so moved to see the flag waving that he wrote the words to the Star-Spangled Banner. The sixth fold represents American pride. The flag flies in front of our schools, businesses, government buildings, stadiums, and our homes. This display of patriotism shows our unwavering support of our nation. With the seventh fold, we honor our armed forces. No generation of Americans has been spared the responsibility of defending freedom. Our military is committed to preserving the rights that others won for us for generations to come. The next fold represents the battles fought on foreign soil. Those iconic images we can see in our minds, like the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima, as well as those battlefields that no outsider has ever witnessed. Another memory of our flag is when it was raised above the rubble of the Twin Towers. The ninth fold represents the September 11th attack on home soil that not only left a gaping wound in our heart, but united Americans in a resolve to fight terror. There are currently more than 1 million active duty servicemen and women. We honor them with the 10th fold of the flag. They continue to protect and preserve the rights, privileges, and freedoms that we as Americans enjoy today. With the next fold, we recognize the families of veterans, those who anxiously wait at home. They worry and pray, not knowing what the future holds. This fold is a tribute to the caskets which have traveled to their final resting place, draped in a flag. May we never forget the sacrifices that have been made for our country. When the final fold is made, the folded flag is in a triangle. The points on the triangle represent the unity of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, our rights secured by our veterans. The United States flag represents who we are. It stands for the freedom we all share, and the pride and patriotism we feel for our country. We will cherish its legacy as a beacon of hope to one and all.
We are here today to honor our veterans and to recognize what they have done for all of us to have the freedoms that we know today. One thing that stands out to me is the devotion of a veteran to his flag and to his country. The respect that our servicemen and women have for our flag is an example to all of us. To have such devotion to something that you are willing to lay down your life for is amazing to me. By definition, a flag is simply an emblem or decoration. It is simply a piece of cloth. I would argue that the American flag is more than a decoration, more than a piece of cloth. This specific piece of cloth has been a standard for which this country has fought for and won her independence. It is flown in every battle and war. It is a rallying point for the men and women who fight for their country. As long as they still see the flag still flying, they know that the battle is theirs to win. This flag of ours is not worshipped, but it is looked upon as a symbol of this great nation. We pledge allegiance to it as a symbol of our country. Men and women have fought and died under the shadow of this piece of cloth. Some, way too many, have come home with their caskets draped in it. This piece of cloth is an enduring symbol of American pride. It flies overseas as well as at home, at all of our embassies and consulates all over the world. Its presence is both comfort to those who seek the freedoms of America and a symbol of our might to our enemies. It is a symbol of nationalism, of honor, and of sacrifice. The American flag is a standalone symbol of the ideals of our nation and for all the heroes who have served under it. It is a symbol for all of us who stand before it for freedom and for unity. Unfortunately, as times have changed, the attitude toward this symbol of freedom has become distorted. From protests to politics, the American flag has been used as an image of unity, but also division. The misuse of the flag to prove a point has left its reputation in people's minds as something other than the symbol of unity that it is. In recent times, our flag has been viewed as a sign of aggression or hatred. It is called racist and offensive. It is mocked, burned, and danced upon, and painted on. In some cases, it has been removed from public places to appease the few that are offended by its presence. This is very troubling to me. How can someone have so much disrespect for something that countless people have laid down their lives for? How can something that countless people have laid down their lives for be seen as offensive? Yes, this material, this great symbol, might just be cloth. It may be just a piece of fabric that is red, white, and blue. But I would say that a person who sees it as that is not looking at it right. I believe it should be seen as a representation of pride in this great land and a reflection of the spirit of America. So today, I challenge you to see the flag for what it really is, the true meaning of it, and not just as a piece of cloth. Strive to instill a sense of pride in your country and your children and to generations to come, teaching them the meaning of the flag and all it stands for. I challenge you to show respect in the remembrance of the ones who died for it, the ones who died for you. guest speaker today is Mr. Ralph P. Capelli, retired Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army Infantry. Mr. Capelli graduated in June 1996 from Ohio University with a Bachelor of Business Administration degree. He was a distinguished graduate of the U.S. Army Reserve Officers Training Corps program and went immediately into active duty as an infantry second lieutenant. He served more than 23 years in multiple assignments in Colorado, Georgia, and Vietnam, where he commanded a company of the 101st Airborne Division Air Assault. He served in Germany twice and at the Pentagon, where he headed the Army's anti-terrorism program. He is a graduate of Army Ranger, Airborne, and many other Army schools. He earned a Combat Infantryman's Badge in Vietnam, along with a Bronze Star and Air Medal. He has received the Legion of Merit Medal with one Oak Leaf Cluster. During his career, he worked for both Generals Colin Powell and Lawrence Schwarzkopf. Mr. Capelli's final Army assignment was the commander of the ROTC Battalion at Truman State University. In September 1992, he retired from the Army and worked at Truman State University for the next 23 years as the assistant to the Vice President of Academic Affairs. He retired from Truman in 2015. Mr. Capelli has served on the Kirksville City Council and has been a very active member in the Rotary Club of Kirksville and the Knights of Columbus. His daughter Amy is a prosecuting attorney in Chicago County, Minnesota. Her and her husband John have 3 children, Emma, Isaac, and Lucy. We are honored to have Mr. Capelli as our speaker.
Can everybody hear me? Right, I always have a pretty good booming infantry voice, so hopefully that'll work. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really impressed with your ceremony. It brings back memories. You know, if you watch the national media, you think we don't have patriotism, but we do. It's right here, small communities in the Midwest. And I have a heartfelt love for this country that I have for the veterans. Nothing better than service. And listen to this, it brings back a lot of memories. You mentioned I ran the Army's anti-terrorism program. One thing I did on that, I was involved with security of the first President Bush inaugural. And every event that he had for that event in Washington, Lee Greenwood sang that song, Proud to be American. So I heard that a number of times, along with Barbara Ann, at the Beach Boys that I sang for Mr. Bush. So they sang Barbara Ann. So that was pretty interesting. So I'm going to talk to you today. You know, I started out as a kid. I had no idea about Veterans Day and Memorial Day, what the difference was. We heard a little bit of history today of it. Veterans Day originated, as mentioned, after World War I, which time was called the Great War of World War I. It officially ended when the Treaty of Versailles was signed in France on June 28, 1919. However, fighting ceased 7 months prior to that, when an armistice between the Allied nations and Germany went into effect. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. For that reason, November 11th, 1918 is regarded as the end of the First World War. In November 1919, President Wilson proclaimed November 11th as the first commemoration of Armistice Day, followed with his statement. To us in America, the reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in this country's service, and with gratitude for the victory, both because of the thing from which it has freed us, and because of the opportunity it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the councils of nations. Now, the original concept for the celebration of Armistice Day was for a day observed of praise and public meetings, and a brief suspension of business meetings beginning at 11 a.m. The United States Congress officially recognized the end of World War I when it passed a concurrent resolution on June 4, 1926, only 7 years after the actual end of it, requesting the President to issue a proclamation calling on officials to display the United States flag on all government buildings on November 11th, and inviting citizens to observe that day in schools and churches, like we're going today, and other suitable places with appropriate ceremonies of friendly relations with all peoples of various nations. An act approved on May 13, 1938, made the 11th of November a legal holiday, a day to be dedicated to the cause of world peace and to be celebrated and known as Armistice Day. Armistice Day was primarily a day set aside to honor veterans of World War I. But in 1954, after World War II had required the greatest mobilization of soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen in our nation's history, and after American forces had fought aggression in Korea, the 83rd Congress, at the urging of veterans organizations, amended the Act in 1938 by striking out the word armistice and inserting in its place the word veterans. With the approval of this legislation, November 11th became a day to honor veterans of all wars and continues to this day is still active and here by this community. Veterans Day is observed regardless of what day of the week on November 11th it falls. Veterans Day's important purpose is to honor America's veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. Every veteran has in his or her own a story, but whether duty found them at home or abroad, in wartime or in peacetime, they all shared the pride of having served their country. They have in common the memory of taking an oath and becoming something more than themselves. President Eisenhower described the moment he took the oath this way. He said that when he raised his right hand and repeated the official oath, a feeling came over me in the expression, the United States of America would now and henceforth mean something different than it ever had before. From here on, it would be the nation I would be serving, not myself. Veterans never seem to lose their desire to serve their country. Everywhere you go in America, you find veterans are the backbones of their communities, making contributions, pitching in, providing leadership, and setting a good example for our young. Veterans Day recognizes the special role men and women in uniform have played in securing the blessings of freedom and liberty for our nation and the world. Veterans Day is a day for all Americans to take time to acknowledge the respect and admiration we have for our veterans. It's a day to honor the men and women who have honorably worn the uniform of this great nation. Millions of people around the world today live in peace and freedom because of the dedication, devotion, and duty and sacrifices of our noble veterans. As a youngster, I often lied the fuss that all these veterans used to make. I wondered why they were so proud. What was it that made them honor their departed comrades, struggle into old uniforms, march in countless tiring parades, and suffer through well-intentioned but dull stretches? After 50 years in uniform, I kind of understand. And as I get closer to my last reveille, I believe I understand what inspires and motivates these brave men and women who have so willingly faced the terror and horrors that only war can bring. Who left the safety of home and family for the dangers of the battlefield and gave so freely of their blood and lives. It is duty, honor, and country. Three simple words that encompass so much. It is also the belief that there are some things worse than war: the loss of freedom, American values, and human dignity. In Eastern Europe, we saw the power of people who wanted to be free and overturn oppression, just as our American forefathers did over 235 years ago. The people of Eastern Europe, enslaved under the shackles of communism for many years, finally overcame oppression just over 30 years ago. Today, American soldiers, airmen, and Marines are stationed in republics that were part of the old Soviet Union, and former Warsaw Pact nations are now NATO members. The world is certainly a different place than when I took my oath of office over 52 years ago. Yet, Russian hegemony and intimidation, the threat of communist China, Iran, North Korea, and other rogue states and terrorists still threaten the peace of our world. Our nation's history and the veterans are inseparable. From our nation's birth through today, American men and women, your sons and daughters, wives and husbands, mothers and fathers, have served our republic with courage, honor, and pride. In paying tribute to the American soldier, General of the Army, Douglas MacArthur said, "His name and fame are the birthright of every American citizen. In his youth and strength, his love and loyalty, he gave all that morality can give. He needs no eulogy from me or any other man. He has written his own history and written it in red on his enemy's breast. Citizen soldier militia, the forerunners of our National Guard, protected the colonies. They, like our citizen soldiers of today, were farmers, students, merchants, from every walk of life. Our citizen soldiers, along with the Continental Congress, which was created by Congress on June 4th, 1775, under the command of General George Washington, defeated the British after 6 long years of struggle and gained our freedom. What honor these first American veterans achieved. What sense of duty they exhibited at Lexington, Concord, and Bunker Hill. On the cold Christmas Eve crossing the Delaware, through the bitter winter at Valley Forge, and all the battles along the way until final victory was achieved at Yorktown in 1781. Our veterans defended this young nation, protected its expansion westward. They fought the British in the War of 1812, and protected the southern United States in the Mexican War. They kept the Union together during its greatest crisis, the Civil War. Over 500,000 Americans died on the battlefields in the Civil War, resplendent examples of courage, honor, and heroism. But there was a lot of pure brutality there, too, particularly in Missouri and Kansas. Bull Run, Antietam, Shiloh, Gettysburg, the Wilderness, and Kirksville are but a few examples, but there are many places where the American soldier added to the examples of valor and sacrifice. The Indian Wars and the Spanish-American War added to our veterans' legacy. My old infantry regiment actually went up the hill with Teddy Roosevelt in Cuba. So that's part of the legacy we learned as veterans from our service. In 1917, 104 years ago, America was forced to enter the war to end all war. It was actually started in 1914 and freed Europe from German aggression. But that short year before the armistice, the American soldier again forged a legacy of duty, honor, and courage at the battlefields of Chateau Thierry, Belleau Woods, the Ardennes, the Meuse-Argonne, and the Somme. Over 115,000 American servicemen died on the battlefields and in the trenches of Europe in that 1 year. Some of their names are enshrined in our Kirksville Veterans Memorial. I have visited the battlefields in France, where there are thousands of rows of crosses and rooms filled with just thousands of bones that can identify the soldiers. You can see these rooms, there's thousands of bones. That's the only way they could commemorate them. And they're trying to honor our veterans who made an ultimate sacrifice and never returned home to our shores. The only overseas territory that America has retained in all our wars is the final resting place of our fallen country. World War II called on our nation as never before. Over 16 million Americans served in uniform, fighting around the globe. They did their duty with honor on and under the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian Oceans, and in North Africa, Europe, Asia, the Pacific Islands, and Latin America. They demonstrated their courage and bravery in places like the Kazarine Pass, Sicily, Antioch, Normandy, the Balls, Midway, the Coral Sea, Guadalcanal, Corregidor, Tan, and Iwo Jima, to highlight just a few places. As in past wars, American servicemen and their allies prevailed, and the forces of freedom succeeded. I have toured the battlefields of World War II with my father, who was a World War II veteran, and many of his comrades. It was pretty interesting to listen to their stories. My father was in college, senior in the ROTC in 1941 when Pearl Harbor was bombed. My dad had graduated in May. He went straight into the Army Infantry. He was on a boat in July on his way to Iceland because they thought they were going to invade Iceland, the Germans. So he went to Iceland. He actually went from Iceland. The Germans never invaded Iceland, so then he went to Northern Ireland to prepare to go across the Channel for the big invasion of Europe. So he went over there, as I mentioned, July of 1942. He fought from Normandy all the way into Czechoslovakia. I got to see some of the battlefields. with his comrades. These men built a great bond because they served together. My dad was in that unit for 37 months overseas, never got home. And so that's some type of service. And it was interesting learning about some of the battles. My dad showed me his unit was the first unit to actually cross the Mosel River and hold against the Germans on September 11th, 1944. In that one river crossing, my dad's unit lost the company commander. My dad's platoon came under fire halfway through the river. They got across. Later on, the executive officer got killed next to my dad. My dad was the next ranking officer. He became the acting company commander. He got wounded in that battle. There were more people killed in that one day in his company than the entire U.S. Army had in casualties in the entire Gulf War. And this was more, that was the 12th river crossing my dad did. So the courage and tenacity of those men and what they went through was just amazing. So I learned from them the savagery of battle and the loss of their comrades, the hardships they did, but the truly enduring spirit we have as Americans. They were truly the greatest generation. Just over 600,000, well, it's even less than that now, probably about 300,000, of the World War II vets remain. But what they did to secure our freedom is a lasting memorial to their sacrifice and service. I don't think we have any World War II vets here today, do we? No, okay. Peace after World War II, though, was short-lived. And many World War II veterans and others were called to preserve and restore freedom in Korea, where today we maintain a fragile peace, almost 100 years after our military led the United Nations force to stop communist aggression, where an unbroken line of American soldiers continue to stand guard for freedom at Korea's 38th battle. Because of our veterans' sacrifice, the Democratic Republic of Korea prospers in the shadow of an impoverished and unstable North Korea that continues to threaten our world. Do we have any Korean veterans here today? We want to thank them for their service. Sometimes people think that was the forgotten war. We did finally build a memorial in Washington, D.C. for us. It's kind of an interesting one. Our fellow Missouri, President Harry Truman, sent the first American servicemen to aid the French to defend French Indochina from the communists. As you know, this conflict escalated. The French were forced to leave in 1954 after the Battle of Dien Bien Phu. I'm a veteran of what eventually became the Vietnam War, a war in which veterans served no less honorably than in other wars and battles. The American servicemen in Vietnam and performed as their forefathers. They did their duty. They did it well. They won every battle they fought, and in the Iron Triangle, at Benoit, Quai Son, Saigon, the Aisha Valley, Hue, Tree, the Delta, and the highlands and over the skies of both Vietnams and the South China Sea. Unfortunately, our national political will waned as the casualties mounted over years past. Only recently have the deeds and sacrifices and heroism of our soldiers, sailors, and airmen and Marines been recognized. Are there any fellow Vietnam veterans who would like to stand up and be recognized, whether you actually deployed or you're a peacetime Vietnam veteran? Peace and fight communism around the globe during the so-called Cold War. It really wasn't cold. This was a long, drawn-out war of cultures that we finally won. Do we have any Cold War military vets here? Eric's in there? Anybody? Abraham Lincoln once said that speeches weren't adequately claimant for those who died for the country. He was right. The debt we owe to our veterans requires a commitment on our part. It's a commitment to the principles of our nation and the personal sacrifice needed to safeguard America. We are the most powerful nation on earth, the recognized leader of the free world. We know that our strength and action exert a profound influence on world events. And conversely, that we can only truly be free and secure to the extent that people everywhere enjoy peace and freedom. This knowledge imposes an enormous responsibility on our nation, and with that responsibility some exacting tasks. Many of these tasks belong to our entire nation. Others, as in the past, can be accomplished only through the courage and dedication of our servicemen and women. The tasks performed by our armed forces in this rugged world today may have never been more numerous or difficult. Our forces to deter aggression must be prepared to be aggressive, but if deterrence fails, we must be prepared to defend our country and defeat any and every foe. At this moment, more than 1.1 million Americans are on active duty, serving in the cause of freedom and peace around the world in over 120 countries. These men and women are the highest quality soldiers, sailors, soldiers, and Marines. They are well trained and well equipped. They are intelligent and well educated. They are dedicated to accomplishing their mission and serving their country daily around the world. These servicemen and women are a cross-section of our country, like the veterans before them. They come from every region of our country, are of every creed and race, and are of every background. These men and women who serve are just as in the past, the very essence of America itself. The existence of a strong military is also the best guarantor of our ever having to use it. History records that the reluctance with which our nation has traditionally looked on the use of force, but urgent fear of the Grenade operation in 1983, the attack in Libya in 1986, Operation Just Cause in Panama, Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm in Kuwait and Iraq, and our humanitarian operations around the world from Bosnia to Macedonia to Liberia to Somalia to Haiti to Rwanda and Zaire and other places prove that we will not shrink from using force when our security, peace, or well-being of the world is threatened. For this reason, we need to maintain the capability to respond to aggressive intentions with a restrained control force. Adequate to the situation, we also need caution and a national policy on the proper use of our military. Never before in history has a service person been confronted with more profound challenges. The skills he or she must possess are more varied, numerous, and difficult to obtain than was dreamed possible in the past. And he or she must learn to exercise these skills in a rigorous environment ranging from the Arctic to the tropics to the desert. Our forces have kept faith with Gulf War and other veterans. Together with a coalition of many nations, our military ended the repressive regime of a ruthless dictator and freed the people of Iraq from more than 30 years of terror and oppression. Do we have any Iraqi veterans here? We also have been instrumental in helping expel ISIS and their terrorist forces from the Middle East. We have thousands of men and women who fought in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, as you know, recently did not end well. Do we have any people here that served in Afghanistan? Unlike my generation, had 1 or 2 tours in Vietnam. A lot of these young men and women have had 4 and 5 tours in the Middle East. So they've had a great burden placed on them by our country. But they've stood up and done it well. So our nation was founded not on the guarantees of the past, but the promise of the future. And we know that freedom isn't free and that eternal vigilance is the price we must always pay for our liberty. What we must resolve now is to keep faith with our veterans and for our military as this nation fights and tries to win the global war. No, I'm not saying try. We're going to win the global war on terrorism. There is no finer soldier than the American soldier. The same can be said of our veterans. To them we must give the thanks of a grateful nation. We are all deeply in their debt. We must thank and support all our veterans for their outstanding and selfless service to our nation. Let us thank them not only on Veterans Day, but every day. Remember the over 18 million living veterans and those who have reached the end of their journey. and the price they paid physically and emotionally to keep this nation safe. Always remember our troops, America's future veterans, America's sons and daughters who have selflessly made the decision to serve this country. Our veterans all had one thing in common: moral courage. Theirs was no blind obedience to orders issued by someone else from a safe haven. Theirs was a solid, deliberate choice of doing what had to be done. No ifs, buts, ands, or maybes. They had a job to do and they did it, and they did it well. And all of us here today, I say with heartfelt meaning, thank God for them. Remember too the veterans' families and military families who have paid a great price for our freedom. We will never be able to adequately thank our veterans, our soldiers, and their families, and we must always support them. And with your support, our servicemen and women, America's future veterans, will continue to honor their sacred duty of protecting this nation, our fellow citizens, and the freedom we hold. I want to thank you for inviting me to this lovely ceremony today. It gives me heartfelt joy to see the patriotism we have in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We thank you all for attending our program today. To our students, we hope that you have learned the importance of respect and pride in our country. To our veterans and guests, we hope that we have conveyed our deep love and appreciation for all that you have done in service to our country. We are proud to have you here today. We are proud of our nation and all that it stands for. On the wall, we have created the Wall of Honor to recognize veterans and our families. There are also displays of student artwork around the gym that we invite you to look at. We would love to have you attend the reception in the cafeteria. Thank you again for celebrating Veterans Day with us. Please enjoy our closing song, God Bless You, and God Bless America.
It may sound old-fashioned, it may be passing, but I believe that we are blessed every single day to live within the borders of a land where we can see that everyone is equal and everyone is free. Values and valor still remain. So every time Old Glory is raised,
guys for coming.
Sound like a politician. First week of January.